The frigid night air in downtown Chicago nipped at the skin and dug its icy tendrils into the marrow, chilling both body and spirit. Beneath the meager warmth of a tattered blanket, Marcus Johnson huddled, his weary eyes reflecting the flickering neon lights of the city that pulsed like a cruel heartbeat over his broken form. His existence was a tapestry woven with the harsh threads of joblessness, eviction, and the loss of his beloved mother, leaving him to eke out a life in the shadows of society, unseen and uncared for. Marcus remained oblivious to the fact that he was under the watchful eye of a different kind of predator. For weeks now, the elusive billionaire CEO, Miles Carter, had been observing him from the luxurious confines of his black SUV. What started as idle curiosity, a gravitational force drawing him to Marcus's quiet, undaunted dignity in the face of adversity, had transformed into a peculiar blend of concern and intrigue. In the midst of the frigid Chicago night, Marcus's solitary existence was ruptured by a sudden cacophony of squealing tires and blinding headlights, splintering the darkness with an urgency that sent his mind spiraling into a frantic frenzy. A commanding voice, bold and authoritative, bellowed from the direction of the headlights, piercing through the cold air. "Sir, step away from the corner." Marcus froze, his heart thundering in his chest as the words washed over him like a wave. He knew I'm just resting. Marcus's voice wavered, a tremble of fear and indignation threading through his protest. The officer, his gaze hardening, shot back. "You fit the description of a suspect in a robbery downtown. Hands where I can see them." Before Marcus could muster a coherent defense, rough hands seized him, launching his body into a maelstrom of confusion, panic, and a righteous indignation that stirred his very soul. "Wait!" Like a vicious whirlwind, the arrest came crashing down on Marcus. The streets continued their indifferent bustle, the passers-by simply offering an indifferent glance or hushed whispers as the squad car's door slammed shut with an unforgiving clang, the engine roaring as it tore away from the curb, carrying Marcus away with it. And in that cold steel cage, the full weight of his greatest fear came to pass. To the justice system, he was no longer Marcus Johnson. He was merely a number, a faceless statistic, to be processed and judged. From the shadowy refuge of his SUV, Miles Carter observed the scene unfold before him, frozen in his seat, his gaze transfixed by the injustice of it all. As the police vehicle disappeared into the night, carrying Marcus away, a primal emotion stirred within Miles, a storm of questions, of outrage, of an inescapable impulse to intervene. For this man, this quiet symbol of dignity, did not deserve to be treated like a common criminal. Miles tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, lost in thought, the tremor reverberating within. In the dismal confines of the holding cell, Marcus's chains clinked with an ominous melody, and back in the shadowy comfort of his SUV, Miles allowed the events he'd witnessed to settle within him like sediment in water, crystallizing into a resolve he could no longer ignore. He couldn't rush headlong into the fray without arousing suspicions, but he could tip the scales in Marcus's favor, silently nudging the wheels of justice toward fairness. His phone chirped to life, and he dialed an old acquaintance, someone whose debts to Miles ran deep in the murky waters of the judicial system. For Marcus, time had morphed into a cruel, vindictive beast, each passing hour heralding a new torment. The metal bench beneath him seemed to bite into his flesh, the harsh fluorescent lights above him conspiring with the shadows, casting every movement as a threat, every shout a condemnation. Trapped in this limbo, he was unaware of the silent ballet of privilege and influence unfolding in the world beyond those concrete walls, where wealth and connections had seen his plight and was moving pieces on a chessboard Marcus didn't even know existed. Daylight, when it eventually arrived, seemed almost an affront to Marcus's soul, its brightness mocking the bleakness of his situation. But when the cell door creaked open and a lawyer stood in the threshold, briefcase in hand, Marcus was jolted awake from his stupor. "Marcus Johnson?" the lawyer inquired, eyeing Marcus with a professional detachment. "Yes," Marcus answered warily, the skepticism born from a lifetime of unfairness still clinging to him like a second skin. The benevolence of Marcus's unexpected benefactor seemed too good to be true, and suspicion tinted his expression. "Who?" he pressed, his voice edged with skepticism. The lawyer paused, weighing his words with care. "A benefactor who wishes to remain anonymous for now," he replied, leaving the mystery swirling around Marcus like a dense fog. And with these words, Marcus walked out of the station, the morning sun bathing his face in its reassuring warmth. A feeling he'd almost forgotten, joy tinged with disbelief, danced in his heart. The echoes of clanging cell doors and the metallic stench of the holding cell still hung around Marcus like a haunting shroud, but something inside him stirred. It was a flicker of light in the darkness, a sudden awareness that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't alone in this, that maybe someone, somewhere, was pulling strings on his behalf. From the heights of his office tower, Miles initiated his plan, arranging for Marcus to receive temporary housing, sustenance, and legal support to clear his name. But Miles was aware, too, that this was more than just a financial transaction. As Marcus waded through the miasma of bureaucracy and despair, a glimmer of something new found him. There were those who looked at him with eyes unclouded by preconceptions, treating him not as a nameless face, but as a person with a story, a person who deserved respect. The kindness of social workers, the patience of counselors, began to chisel away at the hardened shell of fear and resignation that had grown around his heart. From his vantage point in the clouds, Miles watched with the silence of an enraptured observer. Marcus stood in his temporary quarters, a sanctuary against the harshness of the city, when a fluttering sound caught his attention. On the floor, a small note had slid silently beneath the door, almost unassuming in its simplicity. He picked it up, curiosity piqued.